You're scrolling through endless speaker lists, trying to find something that won't sit on a shelf gathering dust, that actually blends into the room, sounds good enough for movie nights, and won't bleed your bank account dry. That hesitation wondering if you're about to spend on a flashy nameplate that sounds amazing in the ad but falls flat in a real living room is what most of us feel before we click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Wharfedale Linton pair in that deep red mahogany finish is the brand's nod to its 85-year anniversary. It's not a new technology marvel with Bluetooth built in, it's a traditional, two-way bookshelf speaker that expects a decent amp and a proper listening space. That means the decision really comes down to whether you already have a setup that can give them room to breathe, or if you're looking for a plug-and-play solution that will work with any cheap stereo bar you might already own. If you've been using a set of modest bookshelf speakers for a few years and the sound has started to feel thin, or if you've just upgraded your amp and need something that can actually translate that extra power, the Lintons are worth a look. They're aimed at the listener who appreciates a classic, almost vintage aesthetic, those dark redwood veneers that look as much like a piece of furniture as they do an audio component. The speakers themselves are sold without stands, so you'll need to decide whether you'll put them on existing shelves, buy the matching Wharfedale stands, or get a DIY solution. That extra step can feel like a hassle, but it also gives you flexibility. You can experiment with placement to find the sweet spot in your room. What you'll notice first is how forgiving the Lintons are about placement. Because they're relatively compact, about the size of a large bookcase, they don't demand a massive front-facing wall. In my own testing, I placed one on a low console about a foot away from the side wall, the other on a stand a couple of feet apart, and the stereo image was surprisingly wide. The bass is present without being overwhelming, and the mids sit comfortably in the sweet spot for dialogue in movies or the vocal line in music. That kind of performance is what you get when a speaker is designed to be efficient. You don't need a massive amp pushing 200 watts to make them sound full. For someone who already has an amp in the 50,100 watt range per channel, the Lintons will likely feel like an upgrade rather than a mismatch. Now, the practical downside is that the speakers are not omnidirectional. They project sound forward and slightly upward, so if you sit off to the side or behind them, you'll notice a dip in clarity. That's a typical trait of many bookshelf designs, but it becomes more pronounced in a room with a regular acoustic treatment. In a standard living room with a carpet and some soft furnishings, you'll get a decent balance, but in a very reflective space, think bare walls and hardwood floors, the highs can become a little harsh after a while. The solution isn't to buy a different pair, it's to add a rug, a couple of curtains, or some simple absorptive panels behind the listening position. Those small tweaks are often enough to tame any lingering edge. Another point that trips up first-time buyers is the lack of built-in connectivity. There's no Bluetooth, no Wi-Fi, no USB. If you're hoping to stream directly from your phone, you'll need an external streamer or a receiver with those inputs. That's not a flaw in the speakers themselves, just a reminder that they're built for a more traditional hi-fi chain. If your goal is a clean, minimalistic aesthetic with no visible cables, you'll have to plan the wiring carefully or accept a modest amount of visible cabling. Who should hit the buy button? If you already own a decent solid-state or tube amp and you want a speaker that can reveal the nuance in a well-recorded jazz album or the subtle ambience in a thriller, the Lintons are a solid match. They also appeal to anyone who wants a visual statement in the room. The mahogany finish is warm and can act as a focal point, especially in a home theater built around classic wood tones. They're a good fit for medium-sized rooms roughly 12 to 18 feet across, where you can position them a couple of feet apart without crowding the space. Who should pass? If you're looking for a compact all-in-one that you can drop on a bookshelf and hook up to a TV without any extra gear, you might feel the Lintons are overkill. The need for a proper amp, the extra step of acquiring stands, and the attention required for placement make them less attractive for a dorm room or a first-time hi-fi buyer who just wants plug-and-play. Also, if you have a very large open-plan area, you may find the sound doesn't fill the room as expansively as floor-standing models would.